The summer we spent by the river, when the water ran slow and grey as old pewter. I was 10. The town lay quiet then, the air thick with heat and the smell of tar from the roofs drying in the sun, and the river itself wore a patient, listening gaze. Grandfather took me along the muddy bank with a box of nails and a length of rope, as if we were about to forge something that would outlive us both. The world felt wide and simple then, the kind of simplicity that only heat and river can conjure. Every sound softened, every colour a shade deeper. We found 3 planks that had once carried windows and doors for a house now moved on to some other life. They were heavy with history and dust, rough to the touch where weather had shaved them smooth in places. He laid them on the bank and showed me how to scavenge for knots, how to sand down the rough edges with the grain of the wood, how to align them so the boat would drift true when we finally set it to the water. The river breathed beneath us, a slow, patient inhale, and the chorus of dragonflies stitched the air with a faint, bright buzzing. Grandfather spoke more softly than I remember him speaking to anyone else, as if the day itself required reverence. He drew a chalk line on one plank and tapped my finger to guide it, measuring, not rushing. We cut together with a little saw that smelled of pine and old oil. He spoke little about grand plans, but a dozen little promises found their way into the corners of his sentences. That the river would teach us to be calm, that a good boat is not built with fear, but with careful hands, that every knot we learned would be a sentence we could finish if the day turned rough. When the raft finally took shape, a shallow thing, more of a memory than a vessel, we tied a bottle to the stern. The bottle held a whisper of good luck for the voyage, or so Grandfather claimed, with a half-smile that made his eyes gleam. We rolled the raft down to the water's edge, where the sand tasted of water and sun and something like old pennies. The river's edge wore a halo of dust, where children had played with marbles and paper boats before us, and the scent of wet clay and fish skin and the lemon rind grandmother kept in the kitchen drawer rose from the shore. We settled onto the raft with the seriousness of 2 men about to cross a world. 2 generations sized up the same old river, neither of us wanting to admit how much we hoped to prove. The planks creaked under our bodies, sounding like a patient old dog sighing. The rope hummed as Grandfather coaxed it taut, whispering to me to keep still and listen to the boat's breath. The river's surface was a sheet of glass in the sun, broken only by the ripple of a dragonfly's shadow skipping across it, and the air tasted of the river's mineral sweetness and the sour sweetness of sun-warmed cotton. We pushed off and drifted with the current, anchored to nothing but the faith that a boy's small hands could steer a whole morning toward some modest good. Our course was as uncertain as a child's first letter to a grandparent, made up as we went, a threadbare map drawn with hope. The bank's trees stood like patient witnesses to our stubborn start, their leaves ticking in the breeze, as if they were keeping time with the heartbeat of the river. For a stretch, we moved with the ease of a pair who had always known each other's breath. The water wore a quiet light, and a single crane stood at the far edge, tall and patient, as if waiting for us to acknowledge the gravity of our undertaking. We passed the old mill by the bend, its wheel grinding the air into a soft, perpetual sigh. A family on the shore waved, their laughter floating across the water in a bright, almost intrusive way, reminding us that someone always had a better summer than you did. Then came the moment that has stayed with me through all these years, the moment when the river told us more about ourselves than we expected to learn that day. A small, almost imperceptible tilt of the raft's surface, the wood's stubborn fear of water meeting its face. The bottle clinked against the side, and grandfather's hand, rough with work and weather, settled on mine, guiding the line to its perfect, perhaps only place. We'd reached the middle of the current, where the world wasn't shallow, and the river offered up its own quiet, patient commentary on our audacity. The bottle's whisper grew into a sound I can still hear, soft gurgle and the rustle of the rope. The raft shivered as the water caught the planks at a new angle. My heart rose in my chest, not with a thrill so much as with a kind of reverent fear, the fear a child feels when standing before something immense, yet intimately familiar, as if the river itself were a living elder who wanted to teach you something, but would not hurry you along. Grandfather's voice broke the spell, a gentle anchor. See how the current tells the old wood where to go. It doesn't rush. It asks, then it follows. He gave the rope a practiced tug and laughed. A small weather. When we finally pulled back toward the shore, the boat sagging with the memory of its brief immersion, the sun laid a pale fire across the skin of the river. And we laughed, little children of a man and his grandson, joined by a river that refused to pretend it was smaller than we were. That day, I learned how to be wrong and how to recover with a steadier heart. I learned that a good life is stitched from small, careful acts rather than grand gestures. A knot tied correctly, a breath held long enough for someone else to pass you by, a silence offered to a frightened friend. The raft has long decayed to dust, and the river has moved on to new shallows. But the lesson did not. This patient art of making a thing with your own hands and then letting it go with grace. In the years that followed, the world grew more complicated, and the river less forgiving of vanity. War, migration, love won and lost, and a house full of children that somehow remained both too loud and too quiet for the heart's real needs. Yet that day by the river kept its shape in me, like a fragment of a tune learned on an old piano and never forgotten. The river taught me to listen for the small, necessary noises, the creak of a porch hinge, the soft rustling of a page turning in a book, the faint tremor of a bird's wing behind the wall, as if to insist that meaning hides in ordinary movements, in moments that demand nothing but honesty. I had expected, perhaps, that happiness would arrive with a flourish, that the future would unfold as a neat line of bright, decisive events. But happiness came in the drift of the raft, in the feel of rope slipping through my fingers. Now, looking back from the long edges of old age, I can name the way that day shaped me with a clarity I did not have then. I am a collector of small truths, a keeper of other people's stories, a person who learns courage by watching the simple way a line holds a knot when the water raps at the sides of a boat. I am not the bravest of men, not the boldest, but I am someone who believes that steadiness, an ordinary habit of turning toward one another with patience and a soft voice, counts for more than spectacle. The things I now treasure are not trophies, but quiet remainders. The memory of a river's slow mercy, the memory of a grandfather's steady hands, the memory of a boy learning to listen. And so I say to myself, still, in the mornings when the light just barely brightens the room and the kettle warms the air with a little sigh, that the river is never gone from us if we keep its lessons clean and small. The smell of river mud and sun-kissed wood, the sting of a wind waking the sails of a distant boat, the taste of lemon and basil from grandmother's garden. These are not merely past pleasures, but living threads of a tapestry I keep threading through the day. The past does not vanish. It rearranges itself into the ways I move through the present. If gratitude could be a sound, it would be the soft clink of that old bottle and the faint, steady thump of a heart learning to pace itself with grace. Time, I have learned, does not erase memory. It teaches you how to cradle it without breaking it. And so I cradle the summer by the river, the makeshift raft, the patient river, the old hands that guided a child toward a steady, honest way of living. I cradle them gently, as one would cradle a small bird that has trusted you enough to sing. There is a quiet wisdom in knowing that the world moves along without needing us to hurry it. And yet within that movement, there remains room for tenderness, for repair, for the simple courage to begin again. I'm old enough now to understand that the meaning of a life is not measured by the distance travelled, but by the kindness left in its wake. The kindness we extend to those we love, to strangers we meet, to the memories we choose to carry with care. Like an old coin tucked in a shirt pocket, harmless and hopeful. I am grateful for that day, for grandfather's patient hands, for the river that refused to hurry us, for a little raft that taught a boy to find his own way with a gentle steering wheel of rope and faith. And when night settles over the town and the stars begin their slow, unassuming vigil, I feel the river still nearby, ever present, a soft echo of a summer long past, a reminder that even ordinary life can be a quiet legend if you bear it with care and listen for the small, true notes that never tire of singing. Time will pass, yes, but meaning endures, a stubborn, steadfast boat of memory.